Hello and welcome to This Week on Planet Earth. I'm your co-host Jacob.
And I'm your co-host Matty, where each week we break down the latest space exploration, science and technology news.
So without further ado, let's get into this week's stories. So I'm going to kick this week off with some more James Webb Space Telescope news. I think me and you've been covering this from the start. I think even from the Infinite Void podcast as well. And we keep talking about how it's getting delayed and how we're not sure when it's going to go up, but they're now saying that it has been put back another 4 days to allow for more checks. And it was initially going to be sent up on the 18th of December, but will now go up on the 22nd of this month. I know that Matty doesn't believe that that's going to happen either, but we can remain positive. But yeah, the US Space Agency statement basically said that there'd been an incident. And from what I'd seen online, it was something to do with a clamp, right?
Yeah, so some clamp that was holding it to basically the ring that attaches to the top of the rocket apparently pinged off when they were, I presume, sort of attaching it or testing it, and they said sent vibrations through the telescope. So I think I haven't heard anything else from it, but they're going to do some tests just to make sure that it's basically those vibrations haven't damaged anything. It's not like it's fallen off or anything like that. But it's another setback.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, isn't it? They seem to just be having setback after setback, especially with this pandemic. I can't wait for it to go up. It'll be a day of celebration, but I think we'll just have to wait and see and keep our fingers crossed.
You never know, we might get a few more days. We might get a Christmas launch.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, no, that's it. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. So my first bit of news is also space and a bit depressing. So this was about we've been off for a little while, so it's about a week old now, I think. But Russia did an anti-satellite missile test, an ASAT test, where they blew up one of their own satellites in orbit, a defunct Cosmos 1408 Soviet satellite. And it's created a lot of debris, and the crew on board the International Space Station had to take shelter in one of the sort of rescue craft just in case there was issues, because it's on the same on a similar orbit to the International Space Station. So yeah, space debris again, not good.
No, it's not. And it seemed what I find like truly this is just scary, because it's nuts that Russia can even think about doing this when they've got like Russian cosmonauts on the ISS too.
Yeah, it's a bit. It goes back to what we sort of said all along, is that there just seems to be no sort of like international cooperation and like understanding of the issue. Like if this was on Earth and Russia had detonated a bomb somewhere that had like blown up a natural habitat or something, like and threatened to destroy some sort of civilian population or something, or a science base, there'd be outroar about it. And there has been quite a lot of backlash against this, particularly from America. But it's just, they just seem to think they can just blow stuff up and make loads of sort of debris and all these issues, and it's a bit frustrating, really.
Yeah, and it's not a good ideology either, is it? This whole like idea of bringing war to space. I know it's been talked about from the very beginning, but like it's never. I know obviously countries are going to develop technologies for like anti-satellite ability, because if it came to it, it's probably a very good way of taking out a 21st century country, especially with all the technology and everything that they use nowadays. But it just sucks that we have to take that mindset into space. We just can't do better, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, for my next bit of news,
very doom and gloom this week.
It doesn't get any better either for my next story. So for my next bit of news, I found this really cool little article on futurism, and they were basically covering this like research report that they'd done, and they'd basically simulated a Mars base, and the title of this says that things got kind of rebellious and it was worrying for scientists. And the article basically goes on to say that one of the things that astronauts need to contend with when colonizing Mars is isolation. After all, they'll either be alone or just with fellow few crewmates. Or if it gets even worse, like the Martian situation, it could just be one person totally alone on the red planet. Unfortunately, a recent long-term isolation experiment on a simulated Mars base found that participants were often get distant and rebellious as time goes on. A study conducted by Project Sirius, an off-world settlement test facility in Russia, looked at 17 isolation experiments it conducted that lasted 120 days, each between 2017 and 2019. CNN reports the organization found that the study participants grew more and more autonomous as time went on, resulting in a limited communication with mission control, which doesn't sound good if you want to have a spacefaring civilization, because space is going to be lonely. And those timescales are going to be lonely, and this is just Mars. But
yeah,
I can understand that. I feel like me or you went up there, right? Or let's say just me and you went up there, okay? And we're on Mars, and the only job we had to do was this podcast from Mars once a week, right? There would come a time where if we'd have been doing it for long enough, we'd be like, well, why do we have to do one this week? Why does it matter? Like we're here on Mars kind of thing. What happens if we don't do one? And I know that's just like me joking around, and it'd be a much more serious thing on Mars. But it is interesting that this idea of like isolation makes people kind of like more of a loner and more like rebellious when it comes to like resocializing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and you know, we talk obviously quite a lot on our podcast about like the tech and the science of like getting to Mars, but maybe it's something we could do in the future, is that when selecting astronauts and stuff to these missions, wouldn't be perhaps even more important than like whether they're like test pilots or whether they have like scientific ability or whatever, is going to be, are they psychologically capable of spending, what, let's say year, 18 months with just 3 or 4 other people and sort of, are they up to it? Because I think the vast majority of people, if you put them, just a couple of people for 120 days or long periods of time, they're going to get pretty sick of each other.
100%. I'd be willing to try it, but I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I would crack under the pressure, but I'd be more than willing to give it a go.
Yeah. So moving on to more cheery things, maybe, is El Salvador. So they are one of the few countries now that have gone sort of crypto, and they've legalized Bitcoin as a currency. And it says here that El Salvador was the first country to legalize Bitcoin in September. And as part of the initial launch, their government's Chivo wallet, every Salvadorian was given $30, or about £22, which is a good thing. But they are going a step further now and pledging to build what they're calling a Bitcoin city, and it's going to be built into the side of a volcano called the Chonchagua stratovolcano. And they're going to sort of harvest the energy from that to power essentially one massive city that runs off Bitcoin. So, as I understand it, it's not just going to be a Bitcoin mine, it's going to be a sort of conventional city that's going to be green as well. But as part of the city's sort of industry and what it's set up to do is going to be Bitcoin and finance. So they've got some serious plans for this. It's apparently all financed. They've got sort of plans for construction to begin next year. So it looks like it's going to go ahead.
Interesting. That sounds really cool. I've been following them a little bit since they did that whole Bitcoin announcement, and I think I saw something like a week ago, or maybe it was this week. But they were saying that from the money that they'd invested in Bitcoin, like back whenever they announced it, to now, it has allowed them to build 7 new universities in El Salvador, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I can understand why people think it's a bit of a gamble on like a country scale, putting all that money into something. But when I feel like most countries that are like in a development period right now probably could have something to gain from cryptocurrency, because at the end of the day, like, they haven't got the wealth from anywhere else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
But
it will be interesting to see how it goes long term, because I agree. Like, currently, with crypto still sort of increasing, it seems like a good idea. But then it's a bit. At the end of the day, it is still sort of an asset that only has value because people think it has value.
yeah,
And there will come a point when, if they just keep mining it and they just sort of base their economy on like, oh, we're just going to keep producing this thing, that there will come a point where it becomes less valuable than what they put into it. But
it'll be
I think short term it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it will be
interesting.
Yeah. So for my final piece, and it's not a big piece this week, but thought it was interesting because we talk about artificial intelligence quite a lot over on the Infinite Void. There was an article put out by New Scientist, and it was basically saying that Wikipedia is testing AI to spot contradictory claims in its articles. And artificial intelligence can be used to scour the crowdsourced encyclopedia for contradictory information and flag it out to human editors. And it basically just goes on to say that the charity, which is Wikipedia, I always find it weird calling them a charity, but it is what it is. The charity that is Wikipedia has developed an AI that can spot contradictory claims in articles and alert the human editors who write and edit the collective encyclopedia. Wikipedia was launched in 2001, and the English language version now has more than 6 million articles written almost entirely by volunteers. So as you can imagine, this is huge, because if they can find a way to kind of go through that and kind of get rid of the BS, I would say that the Wikipedia probably is the font of all knowledge, if they can kind of kind of source it all correctly. And
I think this is a really good move by Wikipedia, because I think that there was when I was reading into this, I was a bit sort of not worried, but a bit skeptical that there was a risk here that it would go down a sort of a bit like Facebook have done, where they start to try and sort of curate and dictate what is on there. You could, and at the end of the day, it's an encyclopedia. There's going to be stuff on there that is sort of potentially hurtful or about sensitive topics, and they could definitely go down a route of, oh, this thing we don't want on our site because of whatever reason. So the fact that they've limited it to just looking for contradictions, which I imagine is going to be easier to spot than sort of things that are sort of by themselves sort of just harmful. I think it's a really good move, because and them sort of involving people in this, so it's going to find a contradiction there, flag it as this might be contradictory. I think is a really good move by them, and I think makes good use of what AI is at the moment. I'm sure they could do a bit more of it in the future, but I think it's definitely a good step forward for now, at least.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I think it sounds promising, and I like the direction that they're going with it.
And my final piece was a big one this week. So this was about NASA DART, so their asteroid redirect mission. Well, I won't call it asteroid redirect mission, because there was another mission called ARM which got defunded a little while back. But NASA actually this morning, as we're recording it, so Wednesday 24th, have now launched their DART mission. So this was launched on a SpaceX rocket, Falcon 9. And essentially it is a satellite that they are going to blast into the moon of an asteroid and try and see if they can redirect it, basically, as part of sort of planetary defense. So it's quite impressive, and I was reading quite a lot about the science of it and why they're doing it. So this DART mission, this satellite is going to hit a moon of a satellite of an asteroid. So the moon is called Dimorphos. It's 163 meters long, and then it's the moon of a larger asteroid, so it orbits around it, called Didymos, which is 780 meters. And the reason they've done it is by hitting this smaller one, which is still quite big. If a 160 meter asteroid hit Earth, that would be quite damaging. So it's a sensible goal to go for. But because it's orbiting around this large one, by hitting it, they can more easily see the impact on it. Because asteroids in deep space, if you're going to try and see how much it's hit off axis, this satellite is not very heavy compared to the asteroid. It's going to be a very, very tiny change. But over the space of a few months or a few years, they're hoping that this sort of thing will be enough to move an asteroid out the way of Earth. But by doing it on a moon of an asteroid, they're able to see the effects over just a few days or weeks.
Right.
Because you can, sort of like with exoplanets, you can see the two orbit around each other. So what they're hoping to see is that they will see the sort of period of the orbit change. So at the moment they're orbiting with a specific period. It hits it, and then they're able to see the change in the period over a few days and weeks. So they'll be able to sort of more accurately and more quickly see whether this mission has been successful. So I thought it was quite an interesting way of doing it, and it looks pretty cool as well. The actual setup they've got.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I think it's awesome. It's like sci-fi coming to life, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I think I saw somebody saying something about this online as well. They were like, it was within our grandparents' generation that the first idea or film kind of came out about redirecting an asteroid. And now in our lifetime, we're actually trying to make technology to do it. And I can imagine it would be a huge weight lifted off the subconscious of humanity if we knew that we could avoid the fate of the dinosaurs. So that's cool.
Yeah. I think it's a really cool mission. And when I was only having a quick look at this because I've just been sort of following in the background. I couldn't actually see when it's meant to impact of the asteroid, how long the mission is. But
I think it takes 10 months to get there.
Okay.
From what I saw online, I think it's 10 months to get there, and then I'm not sure how long it's going to take when it's there.
I think it might have September 2022. I've seen here.
Okay.
So
a bit longer.
No, that's 10 months.
Okay. Very good. All right. Well, there we go. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into this week on Planet Earth. Hopefully, you enjoyed all of the stories that we came and told you all about this week. And if we missed anything that you thought was worthy, make sure to let us know down in the comment section below, and we can maybe mention it in the next episode. And if you've got anything for a future episode, let us know either on socials, which is at Twope News on Instagram, or at Infinite Void Pod on Twitter. And yeah, guys, we will catch you next episode.